Hello, and welcome back to Rails Quest. So you might be thinking, okay, Caleb has totally forgotten about that learning platform that he teased us about all those days ago. Well, that's not the case. I remember it, and I've been working on it little by little in between client work, making videos, and it's deer season in Arkansas, so I've got to go out there and participate in that. Rest assured, it is making progress, and I will be making more progress very soon, so keep an ear out for more announcements about that. This video is a little bit related to the learning platform, but it's actually about how you can get an AI to converse with you about your own code and bring you back up to speed. We've all been in that position where we wrote code maybe a year ago, maybe multiple years ago, or we're inheriting someone else's code, or we've just slept in the last couple days and we don't remember what we wrote just a few days ago. It happens to the best of us. AI can help us fill in the gaps very quickly. Let's zoom in on the code on the terminal here, and I'm going to show you my old trusty AI tool, Aider, and how Aider can help you get up to speed with your own code quickly. We're going to open Aider with the application controller because right now I'm realizing that I don't necessarily understand the authorization flow in my app crystal clear anymore. So I want to get a refresher course, and I want it in a diagram form so that I don't have to think too hard about the relationships between things. So here's something good to know about Aider. Put it in chat mode, ask. So this is the ask mode. It's not going to write any code in this mode. It's only going to converse with your code base. This is helpful when you just have questions or you want to spitball some ideas and maybe tweak them before it goes to actually write the code. Now that we're in ask mode, I'm going to put it in voice mode, which will transcribe my instructions. Create an ASCII art diagram of the authorization flow in this app. The entry point to the authorization flow is in the application controller, which you have access to right now. I want you to ask questions and ask for access to files that you don't currently see until you have a full picture of how the authorization flow works, so that then you can draw the diagram of the authorization flow for me. I want to get up to speed on this feature quickly so that I can continue working on it. So now it's going to ask some questions, maybe ask for access to some files. And I gave it as much detail about what my intent is behind this as well. And so remember to be very specific when you're talking to the AI. I said I want an ASCII art diagram of the authorization flow. So that'll help me visualize it right here in the terminal without any special fancy tools. So now you can see it's asking for the contents of current and policies. So we can do that by adding current and policies, and it will summarize along the way. So it's saying we've got an authentication check via authenticate. That's the scaffolded authentication 0 gem authentication. And we're setting the current session in the current singleton model. Maybe we can follow along here, check its work. So up here, no, that's authorize. It's talking about the authentication flow now. We set the session here. So that's what it's talking about there. And if we look at this model, here's our current model. And you can see it's a current attributes, which is just a singleton. So you can access it like current.session or current.user that way. It summarizes the authorization and the policy checks as well, but it doesn't know exactly how they work quite yet. So I'm going to say continue. Okay, so it's saying it needs access to the roles file to round out its understanding, and it tells you what it wants clarification about. So how the roles can method is implemented and how the role scope method works and any other role specific behavior. So we get an incomplete diagram here. Request comes in to application controller, calls authenticate, sets the current session, then it calls authorize. Within the authorize we get the policy, and the policy checks with the role, and we end up with either success or failure. And now here's a handy thing about Aider. It can actually ask for access to a file proactively. So all I have to do is hit enter to say yes, you can have access to that file. So let's take a look at what it's got now. Is there a session model? Is there user model? Okay, so it has a few more questions, but it's still creating a pretty decent diagram. Request comes in to authenticate. We request a session, a user, and a role. We call authorize, and we get a policy, which is, it's funny, it's calling out the default or the course policy. We get roles such as default or admin, and we go to success or failure. Now it's asking for access to some other things. So let's go back to the top to see what it's asking for. Oh, the session. So the session model and the user model. Proceed. So all this top part part is familiar. It's very specific about the methods, and it calls out that the role comes from the user. And if there's no user, then we get the unauthenticated role. And it even knows that the admin can do anything, and the default it summarizes and says it has limited abilities, which is pretty cool. Then we call authorize on the application controller. So this is about fetching the role and setting all that up. And then we call authorize on the application controller, and when we do that, we look up the policy and it summarizes which policies are available. The policy optionally will check with the role to see if the role has access to the action that you want to perform. And then we get a success or a not authorized error or an authorization failure, and it says we redirect. So now I feel like I'm totally up to speed. It even comes with a little bit more explanation about all this stuff. And it's pretty well formatted, and it was totally generated for me, and I could pull this into an editor and clean it up and add it to my documentation if I wanted to. In fact, I could put it in chat mode, code, okay, add a new file, let's say authorization flow diagram, and yes, let's create that. Now I'm going to do something a little risky because we are in code mode, and technically it can edit any of the files that are within the scope here, but I'm going to direct its attention to the specific file that I want to change. Please add this diagram to the authorization flow diagram markdown file that I've created for you, along with any helpful explanation that you might want to add alongside it. So it makes a commit for us. Let's take a look at what it did. So that's pretty much what it showed us in the terminal output. Then we get some nice extra documentation that summarizes how it works. And that is how I like to use Aider to teach me about my own code. If you found any of this interesting, or you just want to support the channel, it helps out a lot to like and subscribe. And please follow me on X. I'm always posting things there also. And with that, have a blessed week, and I'll see you next time.